So here's the library's homepage, and this, what I was mentioning was this research by subject in the middle of the red bar here. I'm going to click on that, and then you can see that we have guides here on all the different disciplines: accounting, anthropology, computer science, engineering, scrolling down to the hospitality, recreation, and tourism link. Okay, there we are, and there I am. There's my contact information if you need to call or email me. Email is a better way to contact me. And this big box in the middle here, I've listed out the databases that are good for searching for articles. I'm going to demonstrate a few of them for you. I'll also point out over here on the left is a link to the Purdue OWL, which is the online rating lab from Purdue University. They have a really great comprehensive website on how to cite an APA style, MLA style in Chicago. So no other university library has decided to compete with them because they did it a really good job, and we just linked to them. Okay, so I'm going to, the other thing that I want to mention to you is when you're searching for information, it's a good idea to search at least 2 databases, preferably even 3 databases. And the reason is that each of the databases will have slightly different coverage. There may be some overlap, but you don't know necessarily when you start off which one is going to be the best database. So I always recommend using a few when you're looking for information. Yeah. They're mostly with, some of them do have news. It's mostly scholarly journal articles. They are pretty current. Sometimes the full text, sometimes we don't have access to the most current full text because we don't pay for it. Honestly, like, it's expensive and we get as much as we can for you. But we'll cross that bridge on how to get something that we don't have immediately. You can still get it, actually. But if you want current news, I would search Google. That's probably easier. Some of these databases do have news content. The ones that I think I'm showing you today are more of the scholarly literature, because I think that's what you need for the project, your paper in this class. Did that answer your question? Okay, any other questions? Okay. So I'm going to start with this hospitality and tourism database. And for any of your hospitality, recreation, tourism classes, I suggest that's the first one that you go to. Does this interface look familiar to anyone? Yeah, okay, so it looks familiar because this is from a vendor called EBSCOhost. Some of you may call it that, but in fact, EBSCO is the name of the company, and we get a lot of different databases that have different content in them. So it can be a little bit confusing which one you're in, but it tells you right here that we're searching the hospitality and tourism complete rather than academic search complete or one of the other databases that we get from EBSCO. I like this interface because I think it makes logical sense with the 3 boxes. You put your 3 discrete ideas in the database to search. So I think one of the pieces of information that you're trying to find is to find out information if someone is a victim of discrimination in the workplace based on gender, race, sexual orientation, disability, religion, or any other factor that you're looking for information on that. Did I get that right? Okay. All right, so there's some different ideas in that, and I'm going to start really simply, and in the first box I'm going to type in discrimination, and then because that's my first context, and then the second one is that I'm interested in discrimination in the workplace, so I'm going to type in workplace. I will always say that your first search will probably never be your last, because you need to sort of, you come up with the terms that you think are going to give you the best results. And then when you start looking at the information, you might find there are other terms to search. So, but I'm going to start there because you just need to start somewhere. We got 257 results. It tells you that right there. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check off the peer review filter over here on the left side. I'm going to limit to peer reviewed. This database not only has the peer-reviewed articles, but it also has trade articles, which are like professional magazines, so they're not quite to the level of peer review. but they are written for professionals in the field. And depending on what your project is and what your professor has asked, they may be relevant. But for this, I'm going to limit to peer review. We got down to 32, which is, honestly, I was surprised at how small a number that was. So I started to look at the results. So what you can see here, the blue is the article name, then we have who the authors are, tells us that this is in the Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Research. It was published in May 2017, and it gives you the volume, issue, and the page numbers. One of the nice things I like about this interface is that you can hover over this magnifying glass and a bubble pops up where you can read the abstract, which is a paragraph description of the article to determine whether it's an article that you're interested in or not. So this is specifically about restaurant servers. And if I wanted to save this article, let's say I'm going to keep researching, but I don't want to forget about this one, I can click on this folder to the right here, and that's going to temporarily save it while I continue to search and look for other things. So as I'm scrolling down, I'm noticing, I'm looking for other terms because I did expect to get more than 32, and I realized, oh, employees, maybe I want to add in a word like employees or employment. So I'm going to go back up to my search, and employment is a synonym for workplace. So I'm going to type in or employment. Does anyone know what that or will do? Does anyone use that? Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So what I like about these different boxes is in each box, you can put your sort of discrete concept that you're looking for. So discrimination is in the first box. The second box, I'm putting workplace or employment. So it can be either one of those words. It's where you string together synonyms or like words. And you can do as many as you want. And there may be a synonym for discrimination. Does anyone have one you want? I didn't think of one before I came here, but there may be one. Does anyone have one? Do you think I should add? Okay, we don't have to add it now. Do you have an idea? Sure. And then I'm going to re-execute the search. So right now we have 32 results. Let's see where we go. We got to 129. So without putting those in, we may have missed some really good articles. So my peer review is still checked. You always want to check that. Some databases erase your filters every time you do a new search. Yeah. Yeah, so good question. The question is, why did I put or employment in the second box instead of putting employment in the third box? If I put it, and I can show you, you'd get fewer results because it would be looking for articles that use both the word workplace and employment rather than one or the other. It wants both words. So that and narrows it, and you can see that there's this and right here, that it would be anding that whatever's in the third box. So if we had a third term, like we wanted to add gender or disability, we'd put that in the third box. But the synonyms, I would keep all together, separated by or. Yeah, did you have a question? You can. So I generally don't recommend doing that because the computer is searching it as a logic statement. If you guys can go remember way back to algebra, it's gonna, if we changed this to or, it would be searching for, let's say, I forget that I put the prejudice in there. It would be searching for discrimination and workplace, and then or employment. So it would get everything that has employment, but would forget the discrimination. You know, so it's creating this logic statement. And I think the simplest way, at least for my little brain, to compute it is I put all the similar terms in the same box, separated by or. And it's important to put that or there because the default that the database will interpret, if you do not put in a word, it's going to assume and. It always assumes you want to focus down. So if you're putting synonyms in the box, put an or between them. Or is more, is sort of a shortcut way to say it. I know this is complicated. Does anyone else have a question about it? Yeah, if you do, feel free to ask because it's complicated. Okay, so I'm looking through my results again. I see the second article is not in English, and I'm going to change that and filter and say, I really only want English language articles. If you read other languages, obviously you can keep them in, but I'm gonna limit to that. So that was further down on the left side. And it's also showing us that the range for the articles that we came up started as old as 1973 up to the present. I don't know whether you, for your class, Keelan, if you have a date range, usually, particularly for this kind of topic, I would think you'd want it more recent, maybe. Do you care? Okay. Yeah, so you can change it. I'll change it to the last 10 years. So I'm going to put 2008 in there and hit enter to filter it. So that got us down to 65 results. And again, we can hover over the magnifying glass and read it and see if we're interested in the article. So this looks like it's about gender and glass ceiling. So if you're interested in it, you can add it to the folder. And the other thing that I'm looking at when I hover over is I'm not only looking at the abstracts, I'm actually looking at these subject terms because they can also give you ideas for other search terms. This one I'm not seeing anything that I'm that interested in. But. And then the last thing I wanted to show you while we're in the database is you can see some of the articles have a link to the PDF full text, and it's right here. You can click on that. The PDF will open up and you'll have that article right there to read or save. But you can see the first several only have this Find It button. What that Find It button will do, and it's in all of the library databases, it will see if there is the full text of the article that we get from a different source. So this database has some full text, not 100%, but that doesn't mean we don't have it because we get our content directly from the publishers, from other databases. So I'm going to click on that Find It button. And it's going to bring us to another page that will either tell us that we have it or we don't have it. So here it's saying, and this actually is going back to your question about what if, does it have the most current information? If there's something that we don't have, so this says no full text available, but you can request the article through interlibrary loan. So this is a service that the library provides to the students and faculty of CSU East Bay. If we don't have something, we will get it for you from wherever we can find it, generally another library. So you can click on that. It's going to ask you to log in again because it's only a service for CSU East Bay people because it does cost money, not to you, it costs the library money. We pay for that on your behalf. But that's why you have to do a double login, and then the form should be populated with this article information. So all you have to do is hit submit. It goes to the library. One of our staff members will go find it at another library. They'll scan it, email it back to us, and then we'll send you an email with the link to the article. It usually takes anywhere from 1 to 3 days. Sometimes it can take a week, depending on if it's a complicated one to find. Generally, it's 1 to 3 days. It's dependent on the library that we're getting it from, how fast they process it. So if your paper's due tomorrow, it's probably not fast enough for you, but I know you're all good students who are going to start your research early and you'll have plenty of time to request the articles. But there's almost nothing that we can't get for you, even if we don't have it. Any questions about that? Okay. I'm just going to try one more. Let's see if we have this one. And this one says, oh, yes, we do have it. So here's the link. If we clicked on that, it would take us to the article. So always try to always use the Find It button. Some students want to click this full text limit here. Don't ever use that because that means you're limiting yourself to the full text from this database and you're cutting off all the rest of the stuff we have from other places. So you wouldn't find that article if you limited it. I know it's tempting to, and maybe if your paper is due tomorrow, it might be better, it might be faster, but even not, because that, this one that we just tried, we had access to, so you would have not found that one. There are questions about that? Okay. So I'm going to go and search another database now. So I'm going back to the hospitality guide. for topics, anytime you have a topic that's related to business or the business aspects of recreation, hospitality, tourism, or workplace, or anything business, work, employment related, I always suggest searching Business Source Premier. So I have this special box here called business information, because some of the classes are focused like on marketing or something like that. So even though this class is not focused on that, this workplace discrimination is a business related topic. And I would suggest searching Business Source Premier on the same topic, because you will get different articles. And this database does have news. It's business related news, but it has news, trade, or professional magazines, as well as the peer reviewed. And you can see it looks exactly like the database we were just searching, right? But it's different content. So you can tell this time we're searching Business Source Premier rather than the Hospitality and Tourism Complete. I'm actually, gonna go, excuse me, back to the other search, and I'm just going to cut and paste what we did before, because I'm too lazy to, I'm too lazy to retype it, but I'm having trouble with the mouse. Here we go. Oh, look, and that actually does remember. I'm going to go ahead and search that. And actually, we probably, let's see what we got. Search. Okay. 31,000, right? That's a huge number, so much more than the other one. And that's because this database is really specific to business topics. So obviously, no one expects you to go through 31,000 results. We need to do some focusing here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click that scholarly peer-reviewed limit. We still have 10,000. So that took out 20,000 news and professional magazines. So you can see there's a lot of business news here. The oldest article is from 1889. I'm guessing that's not quite as relevant. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do that 2008. Look on that. And that's still 4,000. So as I was preparing for the class here, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be something else. Well, I think because this is a recreation class, the aspect that we've lost here is the hospitality, recreation, and tourism, because this is general business, whereas the other database really was focused just on the hospitality, recreation industry. So I'm going to add that into our third box. That's going to be our third concept here. Is I'm going to put all three words in hospitality or recreation or tourism. Students often ask me if I have to capitalize that or, and the answer is probably not. The database is designed to understand when you type or that it's not a search word, but it's like the algorithm operator. I do it because one, it's easier for you to see as I'm teaching. Also, in the olden days, you did have to type it in capital letters, and it's just sort of an old habit of mine, but you don't really have to. Okay, that got us down to 40. So that is a more manageable size. So I just wanted to mention that. The other thing that you could have done is if you're specifically interested in gender discrimination or disciplinary discrimination, you could add those terms in. And if you wanted to add it in here, there's this plus sign to the right of the last search box where you can add another box in. You can add as many. Just know that the more terms that you add in the different boxes, the smaller your number of articles will be. Okay, so in the last database I was showing you to select using this folder, and I forgot to show you what to do with them after you've selected them and run all your searches and feel like you have a good enough number of articles. So I'm going to do that now. Over here on the right hand side, it says my folder has items. I'm going to go to the folder view. And so this shows the 3 articles I just selected, and you can email those citations to yourself. Let's say you're using a library computer or you're on a friend's computer and you don't want to save it directly. You want to email it, you can do that. You can save it to your hard drive or to a flash drive, or you could print them out if you wanted to print out. It would just be the records. Yeah. all the time. So Google is searching, like maybe they're searching publisher websites, but these databases are compiled by companies that go out and publishers do a deep dive. Like you're not going to find that article from 1889 on Google. No, you probably don't want that article from 1889, but sometimes you might. And so Google's only going to have a small slice. I mean, Google is indexing so many websites, and these articles are not really websites. Sometimes they're listed on publisher websites. Publishers don't put their entire breadth of articles up on the website because they want libraries to buy them in databases. I mean, that's sort of one of the reasons. So you can use Google. You can use Google Scholar. I mean, if you're going to search Google, I would search Google Scholar rather than Google. But it's not going to be able to do one of the things I'm going to show you right now, which is give you the APA citation, generate a citation. It's not going to enable you to limit to peer-reviewed articles. Even Google Scholar has book chapters, it has conference proceedings, it has some other scholarly content that is not peer-reviewed, so you still have to double check when you're there. And Google, most importantly, does not know that you are a CSU East-based student and will charge you $40 to access that article, whereas you can get it for free from us. So if you find an article on Google, I mean, I don't want to tell you never search Google. I search it a lot. I usually don't search it for articles, but if you do, just go search it up in the library database so that you can get access. So it's sort of double work if you want to get access to it. I mean, sometimes there are free articles and you can get them online, but you're only skimming the surface of the content that we have in these databases because we pay a lot of money for them, and so that's their value add. Does that answer it? Okay. All right. So once you're here and you want to email those citations, it has this citation format, and you can use the drop-down menu and select APA, and then it's going to send you that APA citation or print it or whatever, if you chose to print or save it. It's always a good idea to double check it because it's machine generated and it sometimes does make mistakes. And after I finish searching, we're going to talk a little bit more about APA citation and give you some tools for how to recognize if the computer gives you a bad citation. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you is one more database. So I've gone back to the research guide, and I'm going to click on sociological abstracts. It's right here in the middle of the list. Has anyone searched sociological abstracts before? It's going to look different because it's from a different company. Does this look familiar to anyone, this interface? Not really? Okay, so ProQuest is another vendor like EBSCO, and we get a lot of different databases from them, and this one is specifically sociological abstracts. And the reason I think that this would be a good idea to search is one of the pieces of information for your project that you're looking for is how people with disabilities want to be viewed by society. And that's kind of a sociological topic, like how people want society. Anytime you see the word society, people out in society, sociology is the discipline that studies that kind of thing. So I wasn't exactly sure. This is not a topic that I'm super familiar with. So I was thinking, how would you search it? So again, like some areas I have better specialization in, this one was not one of them. So I just threw in words to see what would happen. So I typed in disabled. So this one, yeah, it gives us the different search boxes. Sometimes you only get one search box, but this one has it. Okay, so I'm going to do disabled in the first search box. The second one, I'm going to type in perceived or viewed, and there's probably a million other synonyms that we could come up with, but that's what I thought of as I was searching, because either you're being perceived or you're being viewed by someone. And then I'm going to click this plus to add a third search box. And I'm going to type in society. These are fairly general search words, and I really wasn't sure if they were going to be good, but a few articles, I mean, we got a lot of articles, 4,000, that I think several of them are good. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to limit to the peer-reviewed. This database has, in addition to peer-reviewed articles, it has dissertations, which your professor may or may not allow, but they're very long, so oftentimes undergraduates don't want to use them. They have magazine articles, there's some books, there may be some, oops, there we go. Why? I don't feel like it, oh, there we go. So I checked it. it didn't remove that many. Again, the oldest article is 1973. I think I'm gonna use this hover bar to, or the scroll bar to, it's not, I don't know why that window keeps popping up, but scroll this over to 2010 to the present. Excuse me. That got us down to 1800, that's still a lot. So I was reading through them. Oh, and then we can also scroll down to language and select English, although it is mostly English anyway. There we go. So I was trying to look through and see what are there other terms that would help me focus a little bit better. And some of the things that you can do is with this database, it doesn't have that magnifying glass to make a bubble pop up, but it has this preview link over at the right-hand side. I'm clicking that and it expands so I can read. So that didn't really give me any more search terms other than handicapped, which, you know, I don't know whether that's a word that we want to expand it to, but I did find an article, and I'm scrolling down to see if I can find it again. Here it is. This Achieving Disability Equality, Empowering Disabled People to Take the Lead. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty interesting. That might discuss about how disabled people want to be perceived, or you know, how they want to experience you know, equality in the workplace. And it mentioned this, as I read the abstract, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. There's a convention, which I didn't know about, but I imagine that that would discuss the rights and equality that disabled people are looking to achieve in the workplace. So I would go ahead and probably, I'm not sure what I'm clicking that's making that bubble keep popping up. I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste that and do a new search. And actually, before I do that, I'm gonna go back down to that article, and instead of a folder on the right, it has a checkbox on the left that can allow you to save it for later. So I don't want to lose that article because I kind of liked it. And then I'm going to replace my search up here with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And it's searching, and that brought back 922 results. It still remembered both the peer review, and it still has my date and language limits in there. And it's highlighting, this is kind of distracting because it's highlighting all the words that we just searched. And it can be a little distracting to read it this way. But you'd want to look through it, and I think you'd probably find some interesting articles. Does anyone have questions about this? Okay, so I think the main point of what I'm showing is use that peer reviewed limit, read articles, read the paragraphs or those subject terms to come up with different search terms so you can expand your search and get a little bit different results. I think this, you know, you might want to look at this topic in some of the other databases. I'm going to go back to the research guide and just show Academic Search Complete, which is going to look like that EBSCO. It's on that EBSCO platform. So it searches just like that, but Academic Search Complete is multidisciplinary. It covers every discipline. So sometimes when you're not sure, like, you know, that search is not specific hospitality necessarily, and you want something broader, and you don't know that sociological abstracts is a good database, Academic Search Complete is a good place to go. It covers all topics. So I usually always search it no matter what my topic is, in addition to the more subject-specific databases. Just going back to show you, once you have selected articles, just like the other database, you can, let me add a couple more articles. You can, if you've selected them as you've been doing searching, up at the top here, there's a folder. It tells me I saved 3 articles to it. I can click on that. There they are. And the same thing, I can save, print, or email. And again, it's going to allow me to, if you check off this bibliography, it's going to allow you to select a citation style. So you can select APA 6th edition. But the databases do make mistakes, and sometimes they don't get the formatting exactly right. So we're gonna go over APA citation style right now a little bit. But also this Purdue OWL link will also help you. It'll give you examples of what a journal article citation is supposed to look like. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint slide. Okay, first question is, why do you need to cite at all? You want to avoid plagiarism. Yeah.
Credibility.
You want to make sure that your argument is well documented in your papers, right? Gives you some credibility. Anything else? Those are two pretty good ones. Let's see what I wrote. To give credit where it's due. To participate in the scholarly conversation. So as we talked about peer-reviewed articles, researchers are out there doing research, and the reason they want to publish in journals is that they want to share what they've done, and maybe someone else will read that article and decide to either replicate the study or revise it in some way and further the research. So all these articles out there in these scholarly journals, it's really a conversation among scholars, and you as students, even if you're not necessarily publishing in the journals, you're still participating in that scholarly conversation between you and your classmates and your professor. And maybe some of you will go on to graduate school, and then you will continue to go on. But it is part of a scholarly conversation. It's sort of why we're all here, to learn and build knowledge. And you're not just reiterating other stuff that people have said, you're really here to create new knowledge and bring new ideas to whatever topics you're interested in. It allows your reader to look up the sources. So let's say your professor's reading your paper and they're like, oh, this student cited this really interesting article that I wasn't familiar with, and I want to go find it. Well, your citation is going to allow them to go read it. So it's a good way so that people can to look up where you got your information and use it for their own interests possibly. And avoid plagiarizing, which is, of course, as you know, a serious something that the university takes seriously and has academic consequences if you're caught plagiarizing. Questions about that? Okay. Why APA style? Anyone know the answer to that one? Yeah, there's no reason you would know the answer to this, but I'm going to tell you. So there are different citation styles. When you were in high school, you probably used something called Chicago or maybe Turabian or MLA. Different high schools use different citation styles. Does anyone know what APA stands for? Oh yeah, you. It stands for the American Psychological Association, and why their style sort of became universal in the social sciences, that I don't know the answer to, but just know the social sciences, which hospitality, recreation, tourism falls into, in the social sciences, it is sort of the format of preference in that discipline. If you were taking an art class or an English class, they often like MLA, that's more used in the humanities. There's other styles that sometimes the sciences use. But because this is hospitality, recreation, tourism is in the social sciences, most of your professors are going to ask you to use APA. Some will say they don't care what you use, but that you have to use something. But anyway, this class you're using APA. The reason that you want to use a style at all is really for the ease of your reader. So it's sort of just like a grammar in a sense. There's a standardization of how the information in your citation is presented, and that allows the reader to know, oh, that's the article title and that's the journal name, because sometimes it's not always clear. And oh, that's the author, and which may not be obvious. So, there's a format that it all goes in so that your reader can look at the citation and immediately understand all the elements so that they could go find it later on if they wanted. Okay, so there's two aspects of citing that you need to remember when you're writing your papers. One is the in-text citation. So that's when you're writing the body of your paper and you're going to refer to one of your sources. That's called an in-text citation. And then there's your bibliography or reference list or works cited that lists out in a list all the citations that you're going to, that you've used in your paper. So I have an example of an in-text citation from an article. So I have written a quote. I have a quote from the article there. Over the last decade, there has been a rise in volunteer tourism, or voluntourism, which is characterized by the combination of travel and volunteering. So you can see afterwards, in parentheses, I have the authors. This article has 3 authors. I'm putting that's their 3 last names, the year that the article came out, and the page number that the quote is from. If you do a paraphrase, does anyone know what a paraphrase is instead of a direct quotation? Yeah. Exactly. It's when you take an idea from the article and you put it into your own words. So quotations are exact. You put quotation marks around it, and if it's the exact text. If you don't want to use the exact text, you want text, then you just want to paraphrase it, you would not use the quotation marks, and you might want to say, like, according to Lucen, Oakson, Osten, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. There's been, volunteer tourism has been growing rapidly. You'd put it in your own words, but you still have to do the in-text citation, even if you're not doing a direct quote. And you can just paraphrase it and put it in parentheses at the end like this, or you could say, according to the author, blah, blah, blah. And then you put the year and page number at the end of it. If you're summarizing the whole article, you don't have to put the page number. But if you're summarizing, a quote like this, like from a paragraph or a page, then include the page number. And then here is what it would look like in your reference list at the end. So some things to notice is that you put the author's last name and their initials. So this is one of the things that those auto-generated citations from the databases sometimes get wrong. Sometimes they'll put the full first name. That's not APA style. You just want the first and middle initials if there is one. You put the year in parentheses, the title of the article. So this is a long title: Traveling for a Cause, Critical Examinations of Volunteer Tourism and Social Justice. Can anyone notice anything about that title that maybe is surprising to you or not what you expected? Yeah, this is like the really nitpicky, detail-oriented thing that's hard to see. Yeah. Exactly. So in the APA citation style, only the first word of the article and the first word after a colon, the subtitle, are capitalized. All the rest are lowercase unless it's a proper noun like United States or San Francisco or something like that. Otherwise, that's something that I think is different from other styles and gets confused. Tourist studies, can anyone tell me what that might be? Yeah. So this is a journal article, and this is the name of the journal that it's from, and it's in italics. So a lot of times journals are like the Journal of Tourism, and it's really obvious, but sometimes like tourist studies, you don't know that that's the journal. That's why it's put in italics, so your reader can immediately look at the citation and know that that's the journal that this article can be found in. And then all those numbers afterwards, that first number 15 is the volume, the number in parentheses is the issue, and the page ranges are the pages. And the reason, so I know this is like confusing for those of you who grew up in this digital age. Those of us who are old remember when journals used to come out physically and were put on the shelves. So journals are, they're unlike a book, which generally it's one book and it's published and that's it. Journals have go on for years and years and years. So oftentimes the volume will refer to, well, let's say volume 1 was published in the year 2000, and then volume 2 was published in the year 2001. It doesn't always work that way, but the volume tells you kind of like what range where it was published in. And then with the volume, there are several issues. So let's say it's a monthly journal, and so volume 15, issue 2 is saying that came out in volume 15, which happens to be 2015, so maybe volume 1 was 2001. And there's 12 issues, maybe it comes out monthly, and you know that this is from the second one. Now, in the online world, I know it sort of seems like it doesn't matter that much. In some ways, maybe it doesn't, but we are still sort of living in this paradigm of these journals were born in print, and no one has gotten rid of that structure. So it's kind of confusing for those of you who don't know why it matters, but still does, so just learn it. Basically the answer, or else you might get dinged on your citation. Does anyone have questions about that? Yes. This one? Yeah. Oh, and I should also mention that all of you do have a handout does everyone have a handout that I handed out at the beginning? If you don't, I have a few more copies. On the handout are listed the databases that I searched, as well as a couple others, how to get a hold of me or others in the library for help. And on the back side, I do have an example of the citation for the reference list, and some of the and or not what we were, or the and or that we were searching on. So you have that to take with you. Other questions? Okay, so the last most important thing I want to convey to you is that this is not your only opportunity to ask a librarian for help. You have my contact information on the handout or on the hospitality research guide. You can email me, you can stop by. I may or may not be there when you stop by. Email is probably the best. We also have a reference desk in the library that's staffed by all the librarians. Has anyone ever gone to the reference desk? A few of you have. So when you walk in the main entrance of the library on the lower level, you walk straight back towards the windows and there's a desk there, and we have librarians, and they're happy and excited to have you come up and say, I need help finding information, or how, I don't know if my API citation is correct, whatever it is, you can drop by. We also have a 24/7 chat that you can use. It's found on the Ask Us page on the library's homepage. It's also embedded in some of the databases. Where if it's during business hours, you're going to get a CSU East Bay librarian. If it's 2 in the morning, it's not going to be one of us, but we are part of a worldwide academic library consortium, so that some librarian in Australia or England can answer your question at 2 in the morning where we're not there. And they probably can't answer like a Blackboard or a really super technology question, but they can get you started on what databases to search, what search terms to use, whether your APA citation is correct, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of opportunities for help. And the last thing before I leave you is I have a feedback form that I'm going to ask you to fill out today. And it just helps me to improve my teaching for the next time. Does anyone have any questions as I'm passing these out? Sure.
This is the PDF form that she handed out to the students.
Did that cover what you wanted me to cover? Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure. Oh, did I forget you guys? Sorry.